Roxanne was free. School was out, 1 in the afternoon on a Friday. It was a half day. She tore out of the classroom with the first stroke of the bell, ran for home. A smile was on her face and her clothes flapped in the wind. She sped around the last corner and up the driveway. There was the front porch, and on the porch was a single stuffed garbage bag. Roxanne's shoulders fell. Her head sank. She knew the bag had to go to the garbage can. It would be the first of many chores her mother had planned for her. That single unassuming bag on the porch signaled of wood to split, weeds to pull, windows to clean, on and on. If she knocked on the door, she wouldn't be free till the sun sank low on the horizon. She glanced at their garden shed. Under an eave, leaning against the wall, her magenta bicycle stood. She thought she heard it calling, "Come, ride me." Roxanne's gaze shifted from the bag to the bicycle. She thought of how angry her mother would be if she escaped her chores. She remembered her mother telling her of how she was entrusting Roxanne to partake in some of the household responsibilities. Roxanne attempted walking towards the porch, but her feet carried her to the shed. Before she knew it, the pedals were turning and the bike was quickly moving down the driveway. No turning back now. She pedaled down the streets of Orfport. The sun warmed the back of her head. The Tontickless Mountains were striking, snow-capped peaks against a clear blue sky. Roxanne breathed in the spring air, swallowing the world up one gulp at a time. People walked along in the sidewalks and drove past her. However, as Roxanne passed them, she thought they looked at her oddly. It seemed to Roxanne that they all knew her scheme. They realized that she was on the lam, escaping her mother's chores. She pedaled towards the slippery seal. Maybe an afternoon steamed milk will cheer me up, Roxanne thought. She leaned her bike on a bike rack and walked through the front doors. Catherine and the barista Sprinkles looked at her inquisitively, but took her order without asking. The steamed milk tasted of vanilla and honey. Roxanne could see many little black vanilla seeds suspended in the foamy beverage. She held the cup up to her cold, wind-swept hands and felt warmth return to her fingers. The milk calmed her guilty conscience. She stared out at the puffy sound and let her feet swing back and forth from the stool in which she sat. To her right, she overheard 2 middle-aged men exchanging gossip. "Bill, do you remember the name of that painter who rents a studio down the street?" Bill looked away from his friend, thinking, "Yeah, he's kind of eccentric. Doesn't like people. But he's always hanging out with them. I can't remember his name." Now it was Bill's friend's turn to stare out at the puffy sound, gathering his thoughts. "My friend Nina told me that Le Fleur Hotel bought 4 of his paintings. But the kicker is they hung them in the bathrooms." Bill looked shocked. "He ain't no bathroom artist. He's one of the best in town. That dude is a fucking painter." The two continued to complain of the fate of the unnamed fellow's work. Roxanne had never heard the word fucking before. It sounded important, judging from Bill's tone and quick glance over his shoulder after saying it. She decided to ask her parents about it. Roxanne's milk had been drank, and it was time for her to continue pedaling. She slid down from the stool, slipped on her jacket, and left the slippery seal. Roxanne didn't know where she was going, but she tore through neighborhood streets all the same, coasted around corners and over curbs. She felt part of the town when she rode her bicycle. She heard someone pattering on the keys of a piano. Roxanne loved pianos. Her mother owned a baby grand, but no one played it. It seemed to exist for the sole purpose of impressing the guests. It was shiny black with white ivory keys. It was regularly dusted, but never tuned. Roxanne occasionally plunked at it when her parents weren't around. It never sounded very good, probably due to the lack of tuning and Roxanne's lack of technique. Her parents hated piano music and would scold her if they heard her playing it. When her parents were at home, Roxanne often sat on the bench, longingly looking at the keys, like a sailor looks at the wheel of their ship when it is tied to the dock. Roxanne pedaled towards the music. She peered through windows, hoping to spot the pianist. She figured it must be close by if she could hear it. Eventually, peering through two large windows on a small cottage, she spotted it. The cottage was tucked behind a little curbside garden. Through the windows, a gray-haired man sat behind a concert piano. He had the hint of a smile on his face, and his shoulders were sunken and relaxed, though he sat upright and with confidence. He was enthralled by the piano in front of him and reminded Roxanne of a little boy on a swing set. She was captivated by the man and his piano. The piano took up the whole living room. The man clearly thought that this was the appropriate way to fill a living room. Roxanne sat on her bike and stared. Time fell away and she forgot that she was an outlaw. After what could have been 10 minutes or 2 hours, the old man looked up from his keys, his eyes fixed on the little red-haired girl on her bike. He didn't get many visitors, so it was a strange sight for an old man. He went back to playing. He remembered the last time that he played this particular piece was in the Vienna Symphony. He smiled. That was long ago and far away from Little Orfport. He didn't miss performing. He had a dwelling that he liked, a magnificent piano, and a few close friends. Playing for the Queen didn't compare to the fullness of his mundane life. It had been good at the time. The old man neither regretted his soloist days nor wished to have them back. Looking up from the keys, he saw the odd little girl was still listening to him play. He decided to invite her in for tea. Roxanne saw the old man stand up and walk towards the front door. It opened and he walked out. "What's your name?" "Roxanne," she answered. It was as though her mouth were forming words on autopilot. Her mind raced. Will this man continue to let me listen to him? Is he mad at me for sitting and listening? Maybe he will teach me to play. Hopefully he likes me. "My name's Luke," he said. "Would you like to come inside for tea and cookies? You must be getting cold out here." "I would like that very much, thank you," Roxanne croaked in a squeaky voice. Luke gestured to a tree Roxanne could lean her bike against. They walked inside. Luke put on a kettle to boil, then moved some sheet music off a chair for Roxanne to sit in. The chair was wedged in the corner, one of the only spots devoid of the piano's bulk. Roxanne sat nervously fidgeting with her jacket cuff and crossing and recrossing her legs. She was normally very outgoing with adults, but this time was different. There was a piano involved. Luke walked in carrying a platter full of tea kettle, 2 mugs, and a bowl of chocolate chip walnut cookies. He placed the platter on a little wooden table between them, then sat on the piano bench facing Roxanne. "So, do you play the piano?" "No, but I would love to learn," Roxanne squeaked. They talked briefly. Luke could tell Roxanne was nervous, and he could see her peering around him to the silent piano. Pianos over people and chit-chat? He understood that impulse. "How about you drink the tea and eat the cookies, and I'll play the piano?" Roxanne nodded and shifted in her seat excitedly. He turned around, placed his hands gently on the keys, sat still for a moment, alone in the world with his piano. Then raising his forearms ever so slightly, he launched into Shostakovich's second concerto. Roxanne sat nibbling and sipping quietly. She sank into the chair cushion and lost herself in the music. When Luke finished playing, he turned around and asked Roxanne if she would like her first piano lesson. She nodded and said, "Yes." Luke showed her the beginning of Bach's Well-Tempered Clavier. She watched attentively. When Luke stopped, he showed her how to place her hands on the piano. Then she gave it a go. She played very slowly and made a few mistakes at first, but by the 6th time through, she had it down. Luke was impressed and said, "You play very well," although he didn't tell her quite how impressed he really was. Roxanne was gifted from the start. Luke would show her the way, but she already had both feet on a path. She was a natural. Luke didn't say any of this because he figured it would be irrelevant if Roxanne didn't enjoy playing. Luke believed that people should do what they enjoyed, and you can't force someone to enjoy anything. After about 15 minutes, he could tell Roxanne was exhausted. "Let me give you a ride home," Luke said with a kind tone, but with firmness that showed arguing was not an option. They loaded her bicycle in the back of Luke's car. Roxanne gave him directions to her house. When they arrived, Luke asked, Would you like another lesson around the same time tomorrow?" "I would like that very much," Roxanne answered. Roxanne walked up the driveway towards her house and her worried parents. She decided not to tell them about Luke and his piano. That would be their little secret.